This is Azerbaijani Odlar Yurdu Radio, 102.7 FM CFRO Vancouver Co-op radio station.
Dear listeners, welcome to 102.7 FM CFRO Co-op radio station, Azerbaijani program. My name is Eyüp Hacıyev and I'll be your host today. As usual, we also have Adam Bolmoral here in the studio. He's going to be helping us with the show. We have a special program today, and we have a special guest in our studio. The board member of Association for Defense of Azerbaijani Political Prisoners in Iran. Abbreviation is ADAPP. Member Valerie Patrick will be joining us very soon. As many of our listeners might already know, today is the International Human Rights Day. Exactly 63 years ago, in 1948, the United Nations adopted the Declaration of the Universal Human Rights. I hope I told it correctly. Since then, this day is being celebrated as the International Human Rights Day across the world. I would call it one of the most important days in the history of the mankind. So we'll be talking about the human rights, the background of this day, as well as the human rights situation of Azerbaijanis in Iran and also the other Iranian minorities. First of all, Valeria, I want to say thank you. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and thank you very much for joining us today. So how did you find your way here?
Oh, just fine. Thank you for having me here on this very important day. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So tell us about this Human Rights Day. What's so special about it? What's the history behind this day?
Well, as you mentioned, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was passed or came in on the 10th of December in 1948. Mm-hmm. It was something that grew out of just basically the atrocities of the Second World War, mm-hmm. Something to address and make more systematic people's rights not to be discriminated mm-hmm. against, and to say really never again could anything like that happen again.
Yeah. Especially it's the outcome of the Holocaust, that the millions of the people were killed, and then they say that it shouldn't happen again.
Yes, and killed due to their religion
exactly.
or their ethnicity mm-hmm. or their culture, essentially.
So do you think it actually did this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, did it make the world better? How did the Universal Declaration of Human Rights change the world?
Well, I would say that it really set a standard so that we could, I don't want to say measured, but that we can, a bar mm-hmm. that and a standard that countries and states do have to live up to with mm-hmm. regards to everybody in the world being entitled to certain rights, regardless of their nationality, their gender, mm-hmm. their ethnic origins, religion, their language, for example, their culture. I like the way that they express it at the United Nations, that it's essentially a contract between a government and its people. Mm-hmm. It's really set the standard for international human rights law mm-hmm. around the world, that states do have to respect these human rights when they become parties to these treaties, mm-hmm. and they can't impede people's enjoyment of those rights, mm-hmm. Essentially. Also, what the declaration did was it instituted certain mechanisms and processes so that people would be able to challenge or complain against states and other powerful bodies that are impeding them in some way. And it's also basically formed the basis for many other treaties surrounding women's rights, for example, discrimination, against torture, which of course many human rights activists see as an ongoing struggle. But without that declaration, would we have had these other treaties? And I think for me that's definitely significant.
Definitely. So what you're saying is that it kind of put three important pillars, let's put it this way. The first one, that it made sure that the states take the obligation that they're going to be treating every human for dignity. So before that, it wasn't the case. One state can say that this particular type of people, I don't treat them equally, but the human rights brought that on up, that everyone is equal. The second, it gave a chance for people to demand the government, to take the government accountable, to appeal it when they are not treated equally.
Yeah, hold them to a standard, yes.
Yeah, hold them to the standard. Yeah. And the third, it gave it opened a room for more treaties, more human, more right treaties to be accepted. It set the standard. It started the process, which took like lots of other human rights declarations and different, like in different areas.
You put that very well, yes.
Okay. Excellent. So just one question: what does human right include? What from your perspective, like, does it include right to be alive, right to be treated the same, political? It's like every area, or there are certain areas?
Well, as somebody that's volunteered and been active in human rights issues for a while, and I'm not a lawyer or a human rights lawyer. However, yes, people have the right to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their background or their economic status or their social status or their nationality or religion. People also have the right to be free from the indignities of things such as torture, also free from things such as the death penalty. They also have certain, I would think, certain rights with regards to raising their children, so, as well as that their children can have self-respect and dignity as well. And that's, I think, to me, the importance of International Human Rights Day as well. It reminds us that sometimes people are fighting every day to maintain that dignity and that respect for themselves and their families.
So Valeria, my next question is, what's the situation with the human rights right now in the world? 63 years after a Universal Declaration, adopting the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights.
Yeah. Well, of course, I think it would be probably pretty reasonable to say that we have made great strides in many areas in 63 years. In many areas of the world, if you think about women's rights around the world in the last 63 years, I would say we definitely have made strides there. Around children's rights, probably as well. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but we have, there have been many improvements, I would say, around the world since the 1940s. That being said, I don't think there would be a country that couldn't be criticized to a certain extent for not living up to the letter of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. As we probably know, organizations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch do put out reports every year that pretty well do criticize every country around the world. And there are some areas that, right now definitely stand out as being quite tragic. Some of them get less attention than others. I personally have a very strong interest in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is a war that has they've been having a war. I think it's it's at a lull right now, but a war has raged there that have cost millions and millions of lives, including the terrible assaults on women, and it has been a war that hasn't gotten a lot of publicity or attention. There are issues, of course, right now, despite everything that happened in the Middle East. There's the issue of Syria, for example, right now.
Every day, people are being killed, like more than 3,000, 4,000 have been killed.
Including children.
Including children, okay.
Now, and of course, the death penalty is still used in many countries around the world, unfortunately, including, as we know, probably in Iran.
And United States and China
and many places around the world. Not to single out anybody in particular, but we are talking about Iran a little today, so I mentioned that. And as well, of course, there is still the use of torture is still used and has made a bit of a reappearance in the discourse surrounding security. So some would argue that's been a step back. But.
So the question, you just mentioned that it's not getting the same attention everywhere. What do you think it depends on? So like Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, we know that there's a huge problem going on right now, but it's not getting as much attention as other countries, let's say Middle Eastern countries. Syria, does it depend on oil? Does it depend on? Is it depend? What do you think it depends on?
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that. I think, I think most people would be pretty shocked to hear that 5 million people have died in that war. Some say it has been the biggest conflict since the Second World War, and why it doesn't get attention. That's a good point. Probably, I would guess that because it's in Africa, but
unfortunately,
and that's the only thing that I can conclude.
Okay.
But perhaps you could have an international relations expert on your next show to talk about underserved issues. So,
let's move on to the organization that you are representing. This is ADAPP, Association for Defense of Azerbaijani Political Prisoners, which is promoting human rights in Iran. The matter of fact, Iran in recent years has been getting lots of attention for human rights situation with the human rights, but not necessarily with the minorities. I think from my perspective, whenever I speak about the human rights in Iran, there's some attention to religious minorities, the treatment of the religious minorities in Iran, but not much to the ethnic and, let's say, language minorities. What's the purpose, mission, values of ADAPP? What are you trying to achieve?
Well, ADAPP works is based here in Vancouver, so it's working to raise awareness and kind of raise awareness and educate people surrounding some of the issues faced by Azerbaijani Turkic and other minorities in Iran. So it also works to support some of the refugees that come from the area, ensure that prisoners of conscience that are in Iran, that perhaps we can appeal on their behalf to see that they're freed, they receive medical attention, that their rights are respected. But one of our main goals really is to raise awareness, even here in Canada, among politicians, among the public, among with other human rights groups, about this subset of human rights issues in Iran that ethnic minorities face there, and a lot of people aren't. A lot of Canadians actually aren't aware that there are so many ethnic minorities and language minorities in Iran, because it's usually thought of as being only Persian.
So we brought this issue up many times. Our our colleague here in the studio, Adam Balmoral, he's also ethnic minority. He's also from Iran. We always listen to him in these parts because he has lots to talk, and he always gets very emotional when he starts speaking about the Iranian minorities, especially Azerbaijani minorities, because they've been deprived of everything. They've been even deprived to name their kids with Azerbaijani name.
And the language has been banned. If I understand correctly, the language has been banned since 1925 in the education system.
Yeah, completely.
So people aren't able to school their children in their language. Writers and journalists are targeted if they work in this language or if they do anything to promote this language and culture. And, you know, that kind of prejudice permeates basically also right down to the judicial system from the reports that we have anyway. And it means people of certain ethnicities might be receiving harsher judgments, for example.
Unfortunately. Valerie, why did you decide to join to ADAPP? Why did you become why did you get elected for ADAPP? And
I guess it goes back a few years. A few years now. I've been involved with Amnesty International, the local group, for a while. And like many of us on the board, we have come to the board through other social justice and human rights causes. And because I was I shouldn't say long-standing, but a member of Group 17, I was approached by our former chair, Margaret Morgan, to join the board. You know, and she was always very encouraging that I had something to contribute to the board. And we also do have a very, as you probably know, maybe your listeners know as well, very formidable executive director.
Yes, Margaret.
Margaret was chair, but our executive director, Fakta
Fakta
Zamani as well,
okay.
of course, is also a real powerhouse. And it is really inspirational often to work with her and see how much she gets done. And I'm really pleased to support her in that kind of endeavor.
Yeah, thank you. And I do want to speak about the Margaret Morgan, who just passed away recently. I'm really sorry about that. I think she was the president of the board. What was her
president, or chair
of the board,
yes.
And she was so dedicated to human rights. And I get to see her a few times. I think she was special. So, how's ADAPP coping with losing Margaret?
Well, I hope I don't speak out of turn when I say I think that probably ADAPP misses her strength every day. She really, I think Alex Neve of Amnesty International put it best, I think, when he described her as having, I think it was a heart of gold and an iron will. And she was, you know, if something didn't work, she just said, okay, now what? And I think many of us miss her counsel.
She was incredibly strong and incredibly dedicated.
And she's left a real legacy surrounding human rights and also surrounding labor. It's my understanding that she donated quite a bit to found labor studies at SFU. There'll be an institute or a program now that you can study labor issues and at the Morgan School or of Labor Studies. But I might have gotten some of that wrong, but feel free to check it out if you're interested.
Okay, definitely. I was inspired when you see strong people like that who dedicate their life to the human rights. It really inspires the young generation and it makes more of us to follow the same route. So going back to Iran, as you just mentioned about the language rights and the that Iranian minorities faced, we a little bit talked about the schools. There is no school. What are the other major issues that Azerbaijani Turks and as well as other minorities face in Iran?
Well, I think that is one of the major ones for sure. But I would think it probably goes without saying, of course, that being an activist or a dissenter or human rights defender in Iran, regardless of your ethnicity, is a challenge. It's dangerous, and those who do it are very courageous, I think. So regardless of your ethnic background, it is a very challenging place to do activism. The language rights, of course, are an issue. When you can't school you're not supposed to school your children in your own language. That's a way of really, I think, reducing a culture. It's a way of assimilating a culture as well. Also, however, part of what activists face there as well is being arrested for things like peaceful protest, and that of course permeates as well throughout Iran. Like I was saying, that there are issues surrounding being arrested for peaceful protests, like we saw around the lake. In Iran, there's a lake that's drying up. It's an environmental catastrophe, essentially, and there were peaceful protests surrounding that, and people were arrested. When you're arrested there, you're often beaten. You could be tortured. You could be jailed, very long jail terms, far away from your family as well. As mentioned, there are journalists as well that are being detained, sentenced to very long sentences, such as one of the most famous ones right now is Saeed Metinpour, who is a journalist and human rights activist, and he has a 8-year prison sentence for campaigning for cultural and language rights for the Azerbaijani Turkic community in Iran.
So let me stress this fact that you're talking about Saeed Metinpour and other protesters that went against the lake. It's not that they're being arrested, they're being tortured, not just because they're protesting against injustice, but also because they are the ethnic minority. So they get harsher sentences, they get harsher treatment. That's one of the major issues.
And I think also when your advocates, let's say your family, have been disenfranchised themselves because they've been an ethnic minority, that reduces as well their ability to fight a regime or fight the power structures. So if just to put a point on how powerful this difference or the oppression of ethnic minorities are in Iran. There was the case of the famous cartoon that caused protests in Iran because Azerbaijani Turkic minorities were compared to cockroaches. And basically that they should be forced to assimilate through starvation, I would say, from what I understand. Not to put too fine a point on it, but if you are perceived in that way by the dominant power structure, that is going to impact how you are treated by authority figures. That's going to impact how the police treat you or security forces treat you, and it's going to impact the ability of advocates for you to challenge that authority.
So let me try to paraphrase what you said. Whenever people are looked down upon, when they're looked inferior, which is the case with Azerbaijani Turks in Iran, because by their ethnicity, by their language, they've been looked by the state as inferior. And when the government look down on you like that, it channels down through the structure of the system, and it becomes harsher. The terms become harsher, and it becomes harder to go against it. Is it right? Is it you? I would.
It's just oppression upon oppression.
Exactly.
And even back to the education issue, I'm very interested in literacy issues, and it is important for your children to be able to speak the language that their parents are most comfortable in. That's what aids literacy, and when that's suppressed that also is impacting their opportunities in life, I would say.
Yeah, I heard many stories that Adam mentioned last time. I'm sure he can also join our conversation and talk about it. But he managed many times that just having an accent, even if you speak fluent Persian, you are Azerbaijani in Iran, but the only thing you have is the slight accent, then you get discriminated, you get made fun upon, and so unless you hide your Azerbaijani identity, you're not going to be able to get any power, you're not going to be able to get better job, you're not going to be able to fit into society. So that's exactly what you're trying to say.
And if I understand correctly, although you would know this probably more than I would as well, certain professions are only open to certain ethnicities in Iran as well. So.
Now, Valerie, what type of work does ADAPP do to protect human rights, to rights of those oppressed in Iran?
Well, we do a wide range of activities. Some of it we do at the volunteer level or as board members, and then some of it is done by our executive director and her team. As I mentioned, one of our key roles is raising awareness about the situation in the region. So something that her Fakta Zamani's team does is they help gather information from either through networks in the region, and they gather and disseminate that information. That information goes to our onto our website, for example. It goes to often politicians and other human rights organizations.
So you mean the information? It's about the abuses, the cases of abuses,
and disappearances and arrests. And she has a network of people that can that communicate with her and collect and disseminate the information. And she also appears often, and as does her assistants, either on radio or television broadcasts around the world, including Voices of America. She also speaks at Parliament and at the UN forums, minority rights forums, for example, as well. And she networks with other organizations. We have some good relationships, as mentioned, with Amnesty International, and locally we sometimes have information tables at events, and we participate in human rights festivals and celebrations, such as today. As we speak, ADAPP is at Mosaic at the Amnesty International letter write-a-thon. We're partnering with the local Amnesty group at Mosaic at Grant and Commercial. We'll be there till 7:30, where you can write letters on behalf of Saeed Naimi, and who is also a human rights activist.
Arrested in Iran.
Yes, and Saeed Matinpour, as mentioned as well, the journalist and human rights activist. So we do things that might seem really simple, but hopefully effective, which is writing letters as citizens to the government to reinforce that somebody is watching them, somebody is does care about their welfare and knows that that they've been imprisoned. So that's something that we do on the local level. So as people are coming into the Amnesty event, they're also going to find out more about ADAPP there. And again, that's the raising awareness, kind of the public education aspect that we do here.
So that's incredible work. Sometimes when you do work like that, you don't feel how much you help back people over there in Iran, because I've communicated with some of them via Facebook and stuff. I've been involved as a part of the radio and as part of my personally. Sometimes when they realize that there are people outside in free world who care about them, who care about their well-being, they usually affected. It inspires them. It gives them extra stronger sense of to struggle, to resist, because they know that they're in the right way, they're in the right, doing something right, they're protesting against oppression. So I just think that's the incredible work that you're doing. I'm impressed.
I think the internet, as you mentioned, is a good point. It's really opened doors for human rights activists around the world. Things like Facebook, and we saw the role of Twitter.
Exactly.
You know, in Iran a couple of years ago. It's really incredible in some ways.
So that was my last question. And is there anything else to add? You would like to add? We have 5 more minutes to go.
Well, I would add, you can always, if I haven't answered your questions, or if you're still interested, feel free to check out our website at www.adapp.info. So that's ADAPP.info, where you can find out more about our Facebook page. Our Twitter feed is out there as well, and there are a lot more cases, a lot more detail about issues surrounding language issues there, prisoners of conscience.
And I want to thank you for accepting our offer, that you decided to come to the show. I know you have lots of other plans today. You've been invited to different events because this is such a significant day. I thank you, and I'm truly impressed the work that you guys are doing. Thanks a lot.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.